Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the moment you're all here for in the first place, please welcome our special guest of the hour, Mr. Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins. Hey, Billy.
Man of the decade.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, this works. I'm like, oh, we're having audio problems. Hey, so thank you for doing this. It's awesome that you're taking the time to do this. Obviously, you guys have a lot going on, but man, this is a great cause, Movember. I'm sure you've heard all about Movember. And are you going to be growing a mustache? That's my first question.
I'm incapable of growing a mustache. This is it.
All right,
All right, that counts.
I'm serious. This is it. This is as much as I can accomplish as a person in this world.
As a grower.
Right. I think it's the effort. So it's whatever kind of mustache that you could grow that counts. But again, thank you for doing this. Where are you right now? It looks like some kind of studio. I see there was like a lighting rig on the ceiling and everything else.
Yeah, this is actually, it's the first time I'm actually playing this year for you guys. So it's a bit wild. I am in a recording studio somewhere in Chicago. But yeah, this is the first time I played all year, so it's pretty wild.
Yeah, so I mean, it has been a pretty interesting year, like a year that nobody else has ever dealt with before. So what have you been doing this year since you haven't been performing? Obviously, there's the new material, so I'm assuming you've been pretty busy with that.
Well, the record was kind of done at the end of last year. So I started off the year with the typical stuff of just mixing and mastering the record. And then once the pandemic hit, I just been recording all year. So we're already working on a bunch of other Pumpkin stuff for the future, which is great. So at least we've taken advantage of the time to be productive, but obviously it's a tough time for everybody.
Right, but when you're not working, are you staying home and have you been binging Netflix, or have you been just catching up? Have you been like diving deep? You're still in the wrestling, right?
I own the National Wrestling Alliance, so yeah, that does take up a good deal of my time. But yeah, no, I honestly, I don't really have much of a hobby. I just work. So I know it sounds a bit boring, but I work about 10 hours a day. So outside of that, I just, sit at home, listen to records, and play with my kids. So pretty basic, not much of a rock star thing going on.
That almost makes it cooler though, because Billy, like in the early part of my college years, Smashing Pumpkins was the soundtrack. And you could basically take a box of knives and forks, throw it down a stairway, and I would think it sounds amazing. And so I'm very geeked out just to talk to you. And I listened to, or actually watched the video for Sear, and it kind of has more of like an 80s vibe to it. So what led you down that road?
Well, I'm not arguing the point, but it's always strange to me when people point out the 80s influence of the band, because the band started in the 80s, which I suppose dates us to a certain degree. But it's weird when you started a band in the 80s and people point out, like, you guys are doing kind of an 80s thing. It's like, but that's the band was an 80s band.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm not really sure what to do with that. I mean, I get how we're identified as a 90s band, but the earliest music that we wrote was very new wave and kind of gothy. So really, if you want to be technical, it's more of like a return to our roots record.
Okay. I mean 80s as an adjective, like that kind of sound.
Well, generally speaking, maybe I've been too disabused by record critics, but when I hear 80s, I take it as a pejorative.
Oh, I'm very sorry. I didn't mean it that way.
No, I'm not. No, I'm just joking with you. I'm not offended. What I'm saying is that the band's influences started kind of goth new wave and then graduated to taking that type of approach, but into kind of a heavier realm. And so obviously that's what a lot of people recognize. But then when they think of songs like 1979, well, there is the goth new wave kind of influence right there. So it's always strange to us, because it's like we feel like we have to kind of explain something that's to us is very self-evident. But I get it. I mean, I'm not being dumb about it. But yeah, no. So I'm just saying, is normally speaking, when you're identified a certain way, and then people say, oh, it's this or that, it's always like, I don't know if I agree, but
yeah, well, people always have their own expectation. I mean, even if you look at what is alternative rock? Alternative rock means 1,000 different things depending on who you're talking to. It could mean anything from like new wave, Depeche Mode, that era of things, to grunge, and then you get into the new metal stuff, Korn and Rage Against the Machine. So it depends on who you're talking to. But when I first heard the new single, like when we first heard the first single from Sear, it reminded me of the track that you did from Lost Highway, which is one of my favorite Pumpkin songs ever. I heard a little bit of that in there as well, like electronic and some of the 80s. So look, it's cool, man. There's diversity all over the place. But the new album is called Sear, and they have been very busy. 20 songs, double album, produced and written by Billy. The one thing, so that's the newest of the new, but since we're kind of going through the history of the band from starting in the 80s and going through the 90s, here we are now. It's the 25th anniversary of Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness.
Wow.
Yeah. So what's that like when you look back? I mean, what do you remember about that time when you guys were recording that? When you guys did it, did you have an idea it was going to become what it did?
Well, we took a big chance in that we wanted to do a double album, and the record label fought it hard. They didn't really want a double album. Siamese Dream, which was the album before, was very successful. So they basically kind of wanted more of the same. And I think they were a little frightened by the idea of us kind of sprawling out of control. For me, it was one of the happiest times in the band. Everybody got along very well personally. We didn't really have problems musically, but we would have personal problems. So everybody was kind of on their best behavior. We worked with a great producer in Flood and of course, Alan Mulder as well. So it's a great time. We were here a lot in our hometown of Chicago. And, I was lucky. I wrote a great batch of songs that people still want to hear. It's really a blessing, but it went by so fast. Obviously it had 25 years to reflect on it, but at the time it was like a speeding train. It's really a blur to me. And even when we put together the box set of Melancholy, it was like there was just so much kind of random stuff in there because it just happened so fast. And I would put on stuff and I go, I don't even remember doing this. Like, that's always a bizarre feeling.
Yeah. Is it one of those things though, where you're able to, while all that stuff was happening, I mean, were you guys enjoying the moment, or was it just trying to keep that train on the tracks?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's hard to quantify the times because at that time it was about MTV and alternative radio. And if you couldn't get on MTV, the alternative radio wouldn't play your song. So you had this tremendous pressure to not only kind of deliver singles, but you also had to kind of have a vibe with what you were doing.
Yeah.
And that came through with your videos. And so we had a nice balance there where we made some pretty cool videos.
Like Tonight comes to mind immediately.
Yeah, but even like Bullet with Butterfly Wings, that
Right.
was an important song and video for us. So it's hard to quantify because things are so different now. Now it's about playlists, and of course it's still about radio play, but it's about influencers and playlists. The critics are a lot less important, and the fans in many ways are more important, which I think is great.
Yeah.
But then I mean it's crazy because literally I'll put out a new song and somebody will be mad that it doesn't sound like a song from 25 years ago. So you get into that whole thing of like, well, at what point does the band move on from what you think the band is, which by the way, the band stopped being that band 25 years ago. It's kind of weird. We live in, I call it all times at all time. You know what I mean? YouTube creates a kind of environment where a 20-year-old kid who gets into 1979, I mean, that's the band. The fact that we're older and the album's 25 years old is irrelevant to them. That's the band.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you're in this world, you're navigating a lot of different things at one time. And so that's what I like about the new record is I think it finds a nice balance between what we're really good at, but at the same point kind of lives in the modern world. We're certainly not backward looking people.
Yeah, well, you aren't either. I mean, you've never been afraid to try different things and try different sounds. And what do they say? The key to success is reinvention and to just stay in a place where you're constantly looking forward and not backwards. So I mean that's how you're going to find the next 1979 in your case, or that's how as a radio show we're going to find our next big segment that people really love that people keep coming back for. And if you just keep doing the same thing, man, it's almost like you're treading water, and eventually you lose interest, and then your audience, I think, loses interest. So
yeah, I think. Sorry to interrupt you. I think there's a nice way to balance the past, present, and the future.
Yeah.
And I think in the last 10 years, especially when a lot of people were going out and playing certain types of shows and stuff, I wish we could play those shows now. But point is my whole thing is like, I have my version of the past. And what happens when you have success is people put their version of the past on you and sort of expect you to. And I think what I've been able to do in the past few years is sort of figure out the right balance of that. So I love celebrating the past. It's awesome. I mean, to be still happy. I ask a question about a 25-year-old album. That's amazing. I mean, if you really think about it, it's a great compliment. It's just when it becomes this oppressive thing where that's all it's about. And I feel really good in this period of time. We've sort of reasserted ourselves as a musical band, where now we feel really good about, okay, we can celebrate the past, we can celebrate the present, and we can actually look forward to the future for the first time in a long time. So that's a really good feeling.
Well, let's talk about the new album. It's called Seer. For those of you who are watching, you want to check it out. It's available on November the 27th. 6 songs are already out, but so there's like this 5-part animated series, and I mean, know it's called In Ashes. So there's new music from this album. So what exactly is In Ashes? What can you tell us about that?
Well, when we first were going to get ready to promote the record, we decided to do an animated series because everybody was so afraid of COVID, there was going to be no video making. Well, we started making the animated series with the idea of we're going to release kind of songs with the animated series, which is 5 parts. And then COVID kind of loosened up, at least for a moment. So we started going back to making videos again. So now we have videos and the animated series. So it's kind of a bit confusing, but yeah, the animated series was just basically to be there as a cool way to promote the record, under the assumption that we weren't going to be able to make normal videos.
Well, the animated thing is really big. I mean, Ravi, how many animated shows are you into?
Currently, I don't know, like 10, 20.
She's obsessed. We do animated podcasts. I mean, we're all about the animation. But when it comes to, and there's, by the way, there's 3 of 5 episodes that are out so far. But when it comes to this album, what was it when you were writing these songs? Because you said, the album was done pretty much the end of last year. So this is obviously pre-COVID, this new normal that we know now. So what was the muse, the inspiration, or what were you feeling when you were writing these songs?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of weird because a lot of the songs strike me as if they were written in these weird COVID times, but they were written before that. So I don't know if I was picking up on the vibe of where things were going. I mean, we're having, with the election looming, we're having furious debates about technology, about information, about truth, about who gets to tell the truth. So I don't know. I just think it's just it's my normal thing of like, I'm in this crazy world and me trying to navigate the crazy world. It's hard to break it down into specific themes because if I do, it sort of sounds more dark than I mean it. I'm more of a realist, and I think the world's a fairly dark place, but I think there's a lot of hope there if you can kind of figure it out. So I don't find it oppressive. I find it sort of like I believe the truth is freeing, right? But when I talk about those things, a lot of people are like, oh, it's kind of dark or too heavy, but I don't see it that way. It's the same way people used to tell me when I was a kid that The Cure was depressing, and I think no, it's the exact opposite. It kind of makes me feel better because I feel like somebody understands what I'm going through,
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I was wondering what seer means. Is there a meaning behind that?
Well, especially CYR, right? And it's pronounced seer, so there's obviously
There is a mythical connection to seer, but a lot of times when I'm working with words, I just kind of pull things out of the air, and they kind of make sense to me in the way that they make sense. And sometimes I look it up in the dictionary and it works, and sometimes I'm like, well, that word doesn't mean that at all. So,
yeah, because they're like Zwan. I don't know what Zwan means either. I just know.
Well, actually, Zwan's pretty simple. Is I wanted to name the band Swan, and there's this great band called the Swans. So I was like, oh, I can't name it Swan. So being stubborn, I was like, oh, I'll just make it Swan.
Okay.
and then after we put out the record, we found out there's like Belgian Spam is called Swan.
Oh.
Yeah. So we were actually named after a Belgian Spam.
And then Smashing Pumpkins becomes the name of the band. And I mean, here we are. This is the day before Halloween. You've got to be sick of all the Halloween tie-ins and things that people want to do with you over the years, I'm sure.
Yeah, we kind of always had a no pumpkin rule.
Yeah.
Which was wise if you really think about it, because we've forever avoided it. There's a quick funny story I can tell you. We were playing Saturday Night Live for the first time, and it was and our appearance was right like literally the week of Halloween. So of course they were decorating the set for Halloween. So we were on stage rehearsing during the day, and people started rolling out with pumpkins. And I stopped the band and I was like, no, we can't have pumpkins on stage. And it became like a big discussion. Like people came and there were meetings like, well, we want pumpkins, and we, and we literally had to like get like they had to go upstairs in NBC and get the sign off that we could have no pumpkins. I swear to God, it was this craziest thing. Because I was like, we cannot appear on stage with pumpkins. It's just like, and so that we always had this rule. And so, yeah, I'm not telling the story well, but I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. It's like, we always avoided it. It seems, I'd say it's too on the nose, right? So
so my question would be, because I don't think I've ever even heard the story. So now as you're talking about it, like, so how did you guys end up becoming Smashing Pumpkins? Like how did the name get settled on?
That's another funny story. I was at a friend's table one day and somebody said something about Smashing Pumpkins or something. And I was like, oh, that's a great band name. Because if you think of the English, like the fantastic smashing, he's smashing. And so it was like obviously a dumb play on words. So when we first started the band and it was just me, James, and Darcy, they said, what's the name of the band? And I said, well, it's the Smashing Pumpkins, but I don't think it's a great name and we'll change it. So then we started playing gigs and it was like, they were like, you got to change it, but we just never changed it.
It's kind of like how I got stuck with the name Woody. I mean, it was, I wanted this job so bad and the program director didn't like my real name, Jeff. And so he's like, look, you're going to go on the air tonight and I don't care what you call yourself. And there was a movie trailer that came on the television for Money Train with Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson, like a mid-90s movie. And at the end of the trailer, Woody, Wesley, Money Train. He goes, how about Woody? Fine. And the same thing. It's like, I'm working in radio. Eventually, I'm thinking I'm going to end up having to change this name again. And then it's stuck. And here I am 25 plus years later, I'm Woody. And it happens that way. And it's one of those things, like, do you wish you can go back and have a different name of the band now? I wish I could start over and, keep the reputation and everything else that I've built up, but just have a different name.
No, I mean, could we have had a cooler band name? I suppose, but we were kind of goofy in our own way, so it did kind of fit. And then I will say, in defense of the band name, it was a band name people only had to hear once. Because I had a band before the Smashing Pumpkins called The Marked, M-A-R-K-E-D. And back in the day, you'd be in a bar and somebody'd lean over the Loud Ministry track playing, and they'd be like, "What's the name of your band?" And I'd be like, The Marked. And they'd be like, huh? M-A-R-K-E-D? And they would never remember it. And so I remember when I first told people, same situation in a bar, I'm in this band called the Smashing Pumpkins. I would literally run into people 3 months later on the street and they go, hey, how's your band, the Smashing Pumpkins? And be like, how do you remember that? It was weird. It would just stick. And obviously it did stick. So we kind of looked at it as like, well, until we come up with something better, and we just never did.
Yeah. And what was the moment? Did you have was it a particular single or a particular show, like anything that you can remember that in your mind, you're like, okay, we're like a legit band now. Like we are a big deal. This is really working out. We're successful.
It might sound strange to put it this way, but my father was a musician and had a lot of, frustration with the way the music business was, which, back then it was like you had to go through the clubs and get noticed, and if you get lucky you get a record deal type of thing. So I think I took it very seriously from the beginning, and so whether or not I believed it, I let everybody around me know that I was serious and this was a serious thing. And I would even tell the band, like, this is going to work, almost like mass hypnosis, like we're going to make it. So I don't ever remember a moment thinking it was unimportant, because I so desperately had to believe it was going to be important.
Right.
Because I was around enough people. I saw it with my father and his bands, and I certainly saw it in the indie scene that I was in. A lot of people is like weekend warrior stuff, they play a gig, they drink a couple beers, they hope to get laid. And I was like, I wanted none of that. I wanted like a killer band that was going to like do what it needed to do. So a lot of people were like, they thought we were too uptight about those things. We played too loud. We were too aggressive. We got a lot of kind of bad vibes about like we were too serious, because a lot of indie music is supposed to be like, don't be too serious about it. At least that was in my time. So yeah, we were on it from day one, really. Yeah,
but was there that one, so like, when we talk about like a a mass appeal moment? You know, like when you heard your song on the radio, or you sold your 1 millionth album. Was there anything like that?
No, honestly, because it was so hard for us to get, a lot of labels would come to Chicago and see us play, and they would say, this band will never sell records. His voice is too weird. The music's too weird. The music's too loud. So by the time we got where we started getting traction with the things that you're pointing out, like bigger shows, we had such a chip on our shoulder. I don't think we noticed it.
Yeah.
Like we would have. It's almost like, it wasn't until it was so late, it was almost ridiculous that you started to. I know that sounds weird way to put it, but
it makes a lot of sense.
It's sort of like if everyone's always telling you you don't have the thing, you don't have the thing. It isn't until you're like standing on stage at Madison Square Garden that it's so obvious, right?
Yeah,
if I look back, I'm pretty in awe of certain things. Like we were selling 800 tickets when we had no record contract. You know, that we were just a local indie band. That's pretty amazing when I think back on it. You know, our first record sold almost 500,000 copies on an indie label. That's crazy. We toured with Chili Pepper and the Pearl Jams in '92. You know, I mean, there's so many amazing things, but at the time I didn't see it that way.
Yeah, it's just a different moment in time. Well,
yeah.
How's the band feeling these days? I mean, you guys are all together. You know, you said things seem to be working out. The band's happy. You're happy. I'm sure you guys are ready to go out and start performing this when we can for people live.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great time. We're getting up there a little bit, but we all have kids, and I think we really appreciate that we get along and are really supportive of one another. And I think that has a lot to do with the music getting strong again. And I think we're just happy to be back in the business of what we do. You know, we started as kids, and we had a lot of success. And I think for us, it goes back to the same thing I'm talking about. In our inner ideology, just being together is not enough. Just being able to play big shows because we're quote unquote the Smashing Pumpkins, that's not enough. For us, success is making strong new music and being able to do all those other things. And if we can put all those pieces together, that's when we're at our happiest, because we feel like that's who we are. We're musicians, and we should be making music. We're not interested in resting on our laurels or just luxuriating in the past. So that's what I'm saying. It's just a really nice time. It's got this beautiful balance. It's like, it's nice to have a song in the radio, and it's nice to look back in an anniversary, like 25 years of Melancholy. All that feels really good. Like it's a nice balance. Where for a lot of years there, it didn't feel that. You didn't have certain people were in the band, or there was angry people. You know what I mean? So to have 3/4 of the band under the same roof. In fact, the room I'm in right now was when we started to get back together to practice for the big tour we did a couple years ago. It was actually in this room. So there's some memories there, even just of, can we still do it, and can we still do it at that high level? And we went, we were going out and playing 3.5-hour shows. So feels great. Life's great. And I say that with all respect to what everybody's going through in these really difficult times.
Well, I think it's given a lot of people perspective too. Like, people who might have been bitching back in October, November, this time last year, whole different idea of what's good, what's not good, what, you were complaining about. Maybe it was a first world problem this time last year. And now you just have that different perspective. And you can appreciate, when things come back, and people will appreciate it that much more. Yeah,
I say that. That's kind of what I'm saying. I'm so glad that we've been able to put our kind of, house in order as much as we can to make music. We have such great respect for our longtime fans. And now, because of the continued success, we see a lot of young fans coming through the door, which is great. And we look forward to playing again for people. But at the same time, I think, we talk about it a lot in house. We're very respectful of what people are going through. It's like, it's not the time to play that. Like you said, like, it's not the time to bitch. It's not the time to say, oh, woe is me, I couldn't do X, Y, Z. We're very lucky, and we're lucky because we've had great fans. And so I think there's a sweetness there, even though it's a tough time. Like, I think we're in a great sense of appreciation that we are able to make music, and we are able to, to talk to people like you about what we're doing. There's a sweetness there because we know how hard it is, and we know how hard it is for a lot of people right now too. So I think there's a nice balance there if you can keep the humility in that and really mean it, because you realize, we look back now at a concert, right? Something we just completely took for granted. Oh, do you want to go see so-and-so at the Megadome? Now it's like, my God, I would go see the worst band in the world.
Yeah.
Well, it's so cool because thinking back to the days where there actually were real concerts, when we all got together as a show, one of the first things we did together as a group outside of work was to go see you guys. You had a residency at the Fillmore in San Francisco. We didn't even know what a residency was. That's how ahead of its time it was. And we all went, I think we went, 4 nights?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Oh my God!
So we have a great memory as a show tied in with you guys.
Those are legendary shows if you've ever seen the documentary.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Greg's got it. Hold on.
I keep that on my wall. That's the one.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Yeah. So big memories with us as well.
Yeah.
And when people, you guys are making music or people are creating TV shows or creating content, I mean, it really is, I think, helpful. I mean, I know I find, entertainment and comfort and some sense of normalcy from, the places, the outlets that I go to looking for stuff to just kind of take your mind off of politics and the COVID stuff. It's just, it becomes exhausting. So to be able to really, if you got the time and you're working from home or whatever, you can really get into it and really spend some even more quality time with it than you would maybe otherwise, because you'd be so busy doing these other things, like you said, that we take for granted. So
yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this. I just want to make sure we get all the information about the album. It's called Sear, double album, 20 different songs, and available November the 27th. Make sure you check out the animated series, a 5-part animated series. And here today, 2 more songs coming out. And then there's a music video for the title track, which is called Sear, spelled C-Y-R, by the way, pronounced Sear, because it's Billy's world. He can do whatever he wants. All that works. And all 4, and by the way, I mean, yes, it's Menace's birthday. Menace has been Menace's birthday is the 25th anniversary of Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. My birthday. So it really is a birthday smash. But the reason for the season, so to speak, is Movember. And Movember does a lot of great things when it comes to not only mental health for men, physical health, prostate cancer and testicular cancers and everything else, getting awareness out there. So that's why you see people having, big goofy mustaches. I remember the first time I really got aware of Movember, it was Aaron Rodgers from the Green Bay Packers. I'm like, what the F is he doing, man? What's with the 70s mustache? And then I heard more about Movember, and I gave him a break on it. But you can get involved in so many different ways. I mean, just by being a part of this event and watching Billy's performance and this question and answer session, you're doing your part, because all the money from the code that you purchased to be able to watch this today, all that money goes to Movember and all the great stuff that they do. And so that's one way you can be involved. You can grow what they call a grow a
right.
bro, right, Menace?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. See, these guys, they haven't shaved yet. They're going to be shaving by the time this is all said and done today. You're going to see by the time this whole thing wraps up, they will be clean shaven.
That's right.
Growing for November. Yeah, or you can do your own thing. You can go and walk or run 60 miles. 60 miles for it's a crazy stat, but there are a lot of people every day who are dying from suicide, and most suicides are men. But I said testicular cancer, prostate cancer. So Movember does a lot of great things to help people in all types of situations. So thank you for being a part of it. If you want more information, you can go to Movember.com. All right, so there's my official stuff, Billy. I want to make sure everybody knows about Movember and the cause, but really you are the man of the hour. You are the marquee entertainment for the event, and we're going to hear some songs live from the studio. And so it's just you, right? You got to set up, and this is when I really can appreciate an artist. When it's in the studio and it's not a bunch of fancy, studio magic and things like that. So we're really looking forward to this. So what can we expect here?
Well, some sad songs and some more sad songs. And, a couple sad songs you might recognize.
All right. Sounds good. So we're gonna get a little mix of new, we're gonna get a little mix of old, and it's Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins for our big Movember Woody Show birthday smash. All right, here we go. Billy Corgan.
Yeah.
Coming up, Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins.